Krebsbach.
Mr. President, the House Bill 1019, the North Dakota Parks and Recreation Department, has a few amendments to be heard this morning. The first one, of course, is restoring the governor's salary and package on compensation to the bill. And next we have a restoration of a reduction that was made in the House, and this is for a purchase of a marina that is at the Fort Stevens area recreation. What this arena is that it's a business that has been in operation for 25 years, and it would be a good purchase for the state. The owners want to retire. They are private owners, and they have a difficult time in selling this to anyone because a third party would really not be interested because of the lease arrangement that is present. It would be that they could get a lease for 5, maybe 7.5 years, but to make a major investment with only that time of a guarantee, it makes it difficult to find a buyer. And it would, as I said, make a good purchase for the state. The next amendment is the addition of a military artifact collection that is currently on display at Fort Abraham Lincoln. There's a very interesting story with this particular situation. It starts back in 1919 when a young man was born in Mandan, and in the late 20s he started riding his bike, and he would go out to the fort area, and he had a passion for collecting. And when the CCC came to Fort Lincoln in the 30s and started digging, this gentleman was there to pick up the things that they threw away. And also he developed a remarkable collection from the fort and the adjacent Mandan Indian village. Well, in this year, this gentleman had a stroke, and he has been in care for that, of course, and his family is interested in turning this collection over to the state, but they would like to have some revenue for it. The amount that we are looking at in this is $42,500, and it has been inventoried and has been appraised. So I think we're getting our value out of this. And if we do not buy it, they would perhaps put it up for sale. The collection, which is comprised of many items, I forget the number, it would be sold, probably split up and whatnot. And it seems very good to keep that in state here in North Dakota and keep it at the fort where it has been, where it was found, and where it can remain. The next amendment that we have is that of the adding funding for a one-time purchase of picnic tables for the park area and fire rings. They had requested $150,000. Between the two items, we are giving them $75,000. The next one that we are going to talk about is the funding that has been increased for community grants. There are many small parks in the state that have had difficulty keeping and maintaining their parks, and they can apply to this end for grants through the state park. And 2 sessions ago, we gave them $400,000. In the last session, they got nothing. They came back this time and asked for $1 million. The House had granted them $400,000, and we are increasing that by $200,000 to $600,000. And as I say, this gives opportunity for small communities that have parks to require some money for their park operations, not operations, for upkeep, I'm sure, and for equipment. The next one is a more major one, and that is that the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center is requesting funding for $3.15 million for an expansion that they made. We do have history of granting them addition or on their second renovation and addition, and in the 2009 session, we gave them I've got the wrong figure here. I have to find it. Okay. we granted them 1.5 million. They have gone to another expansion, and they had really intended to do this through their own grant finding and through donations. However, they did run into problems with getting foundation money when we did the new center over across the way here for the state. Some of that money dried up that would normally go to them. So at any rate, this is an interesting situation because the land and the building at this interpretive center, which is just outside of Washburn, is owned by the state. It's a true public-private partnership. And by the foundation of the Lewis and Clark Foundation operating it, it saves the state of North Dakota about $1 million a year with their taking care of the operations. In addition to that, there was a rest area on the other side of Washburn that was no longer utilized. It was torn down, and the rest area for the public is in this interpretive center, which they maintain at their cost for the state. So that covers that amendment. The next one we have is that of adding funding, no, excuse me. The next amendment is that we removed from the House the Walhalla Gorge and Frostfire project, which would have been a ski area and a theater. At this time, we felt that there had not been enough study for the state to undertake this, and we just felt like that is a project that perhaps we should be reviewing later on if the state is interested in doing it at all through the Parks and Rec. Then there was one further addition that was made, and that was to the Peace Gardens. The Peace Gardens has had some infrastructure needs that they have needed for several years. Water system, sewer system, roads, ditches, and other things. And they were looking for $4,416,000 for that. But more importantly up there, I think, well, I mean, that's important, but there's another situation. The tower that stands in the park up there is really an icon for that park. And it is starting to have crumbling problems and whatnot. We know what we had to do with the main tower here in the Capitol, and they're starting to have structural changes and problems with that tower. In fact, it is roped off so people cannot even get up near it. And they were looking for $500,000 just to start getting some work done on it and to do perhaps some engineering costs and so on. Your committee decided with these two projects it was close to $5 million, and what we did was we offered them $2,500,000, and out of that, let's see, they are going to have matching funds for dollar-to-dollar basis from non-state sources. So in other words, in the past they have been very successful, and the Canadian government and the province of Manitoba have also contributed a lot to this Peace Gardens. So it is a joint venture between Manitoba and North Dakota because it runs into both countries. So we look to them to do their fundraising through other foundations, private donations, or through the governments of our neighboring country across the way. So with that, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, that concludes the amendments, and we adopted them unanimously in the committee. Excuse me, I think there was a few votes against one project, but otherwise we did pretty much adopt the amendments for the Parks and Rec Department.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Miller.
Mr. President, I can't help but point out the irony that we're striking a ski resort purchase and then putting in a Marina Bay purchase. I can totally understand that there might be some problems with people. I have my own reservations about the state purchasing in a ski resort, but if we're not going to do that, then why do anything at all? And I also have some problems with the money pit that we're funding up by Washburn. I think we need to stop and think about this. We could reject amendments, but I suggest that we kill the whole bill.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Krebsbach.
Mr. President, I think those remarks just demand a little bit of an explanation. First of all, the marina that we're talking about is on state park land, and there is not much alternative. Besides, it is a good revenue producing situation with the slips that are there. They have a benefit of having floating docks, so if the water rises or lowers, they're able to maintain those slips, and they're highly in demand. And the state figures that they can operate that with the help of seasonal people that they hire. So, and then insofar as the other project, the Washburn one, if we do not help out the foundation at this time, it probably, the entire thing will end up back into the state property. And it is state property now, but I mean the operations end of it would end up back here. And we would be paying money each year for the operations of this. So I think with those items, we need to look at the future in how we would be advantaging the state.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question will be on the proposed amendment to House Bill 1019. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The proposed amendments have been adopted. On the 14th order, we have before us House Bill 1019. Madam Secretary, will you read the title?
House Bill 1019, a bill for an act to provide an appropriation for defraying the expenses of the Parks and Recreation Department and for providing a grant to the International Peace Garden to provide for matching funds, to provide an exemption, and to declare an emergency.
Senator Krebsbach.
Mr. President, for almost 50 years, the North Dakota Parks and Recreation Department has managed the natural, historic, cultural, and recreational resources of our 14 state parks to the enjoyment and benefit for all of our visitors, local and nationwide, and even foreign. They come for camping, fishing, hiking, biking, horseback riding, historical and interpretive programs, snowmobiling, and ATVing. There were 6 parks that were affected in the 2011 flooding, but even with that, there was an all-time record of camper nights and visitors to the park in 2012. In fact, camper nights exceeded 67,000 and cabin nights over 3,200. Reservations for campsites, cabins, and meeting facilities and shelters were also at a high time demand for the 2012 year. They had hosted over 100 special events, drawing annually approximately 250 people. In addition to that, Mr. President, I would like to just give you the figures on what their budget is for this coming biennium. Their total biennium totals $34,909,966. And out of that, it is $23,118 that is general state funds. And out of that general state fund, $9,397 are one-time spending funds. They have 55 full-time employees, and they have approximately 150 part-time summer employees or seasonal employees. Mr. President, we're getting a good bang for the buck in North Dakota with our North Dakota Parks and Recreation Department, and your Committee on Appropriations unanimously gives this a due pass.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, the question will be on the final passage of House Bill 1019. Secretary will open the key and each senator will record their vote. Have all senators voted? Do any senators wish to change their vote? Secretary will close the key and take the final tally. The final tally on House Bill 1019 reveals 41 yea, 3 nay, 3 absent. The bill passes and the emergency clause is carried.